Now, while Bitcoin is stalling, the Bitcoin rally is stalling at the 200 period, as you'll see in this video, here in the daily time frame, the Bitcoin risk model is bullish. We continue to be in a risk-on environment. The risk line is positive, and the Bitcoin trend is positive. This is just looking at the swing moves with Bitcoin as we've rallied up to the 200. Signals for the risk model are still bullish at this point. As I started to make the video, Bitcoin started to sell off down about 1.40%. Now it's rebounding. Now it's up 0.5%. We'll see if we can clear the 200 or get rejection at it. Again, cloud is bullish at this point. Momentum positive. We pull back and go to 68, 69,000, or just try to clear the 200 and go parabolic and try to reach it. NASDAQ can fill the gap at 20,400. Now, momentum is still bullish. The momentum line is still bullish. Again, the cloud, this line right here representing the short-term swing move is bullish. We got above trend line, but we're stalling at the 200, the black line. Balance of power is positive. Signals are bullish, but with the Sunday session bar, we got a topping signal. Now, we had this signal form on Thursday. I told you about it, but then it got canceled out and away. This one didn't. Last one we got gave us a pullback. Others have marked the tops right here, and back over here, along with these bottoms over and over again. Does a really good job of marking the short-term tops and bottoms regarding momentum. And sometimes it's a major top, larger swing move down. Other times, again, a shorter-term top for a pullback. We'll see what becomes of this one, suggesting momentum might shift here at the 200 period moving average. Let me be clear. Momentum signals are bullish. Trending signals are bullish. The bears are still in control in the weekly time frame. Things are bearish there. Here we have the bars reflecting momentum, and they remain green. The momentum line is blue above the 100 period moving average. We just bust on through this level and keep going through the 200, or does this signal end up proving to be correct, and we start seeing the momentum line back down, we start getting a pullback, maybe a back test. Sorry, I'm a little bit under the weather right now. Have to bear with me. Just bringing it up close here. If I start seeing the bars turn red, reflecting momentum, I'll start getting the momentum line bearish. We start getting a sell-off. Then we'll be watching, do we get a pullback? We start a reversal. Again, I told you what I think. I think we're going to get a fake-out move above this level. Eventually, NASDAQ will go to 20,400. I think Bitcoin will come up here. I could be wrong about that if we establish another lower high. All the signals come back and turn bearish. We start coming back and taking out Bitcoin's average price. Now, same thing here when I have the bars reflecting the trend, not the momentum. They're still bullish. This little line right here is the impulse line. It'll turn before the momentum line. It's more sensitive. Again, we've got this possible momentum top right now. For the 200 period we'll be watching. But momentum is positive here. So again, maybe we just get a pullback and continue onward and upward. Should this signal play out or not? Trend signals are bullish. Momentum signals are bullish in the daily time frame. Bulls got to flip the weekly charts to bullish, back to bullish, to regain control. Now, even if Bitcoin pulls back, the trending signals may remain bullish. So again, will it clear the high over here? Will it clear that high? And if so, then it could come up into this area over here. 68, 69,000. If we clear that, horizontal resistance zone is at 70, 71,000. Stalling at the 200 period. Again, signals remain bullish right now. Please support the channel with the link directly below. If you follow the link, it'll take you to a secured site. If you can support the channel, I'd really appreciate it. Channels have sponsors. Don't choose to do that. I don't want to sell you things. Just have a direct relationship with you. I need your help in order to make it work. Like the chart, you like the indicators, let me know that and support the channel. I know you want this information and you like this information. Follow the link below to take you to a secured site. You can donate any amount you want or make it a recurring donation. If you do that, I thank you. But please consider helping out today. I thank you for your consideration for that. The inversion of the yield curve, meaning it was now back above the 10 previously, back below the 10. Previously, with the inverted yield curve, things went goofy and the 2 higher than the 10. Everybody goes, oh, the propaganda. Oh, we've had the uninverting of the yield curve. Everything is going back to normal. When this happens, it's telling you a recession is about to happen. I don't understand. The Fed just cut. This is like 2020. Over here in 2020 and 2021, you didn't have an inverted yield curve predicting a recession. You didn't have the unemployment rate triggering the Psalm rule predicting a recession. You've got that now. People don't understand. Oh, the Fed's just going to come in and lower rates to nothing. Back QE infinity and beyond. Can't. If they do, inflation will come roaring back. A repeat performance of what happened in the 1970s where they started to lower rates. It's over, and then inflation comes roaring back, and they had to jack rates up to 20%. That's the difference, and again, it amazes me. People buy into the soft landing propaganda, which historically the rate cuts are associated with. The recession, and all these so-called experts telling us, oh no, soft landing. It's a bunch of fairy tales. You get the people on social media repeating it. To have a recession, people are burying their heads in the sand like they did back at the 2021 top. The dollar has broken out of this trend line. It's now back tested it, and Bitcoin has let chop since then as this trend line has been back tested. It's now forming a bullish divergence here on the RSI with the dollar. To break the trend line to back test, talked about that possibility, back up, you're selling off. We sold off, the dollar went down. The Bitcoin dropped 33%. Had a lot of chop. This is very bearish for Bitcoin if this divergence starts playing out at the 200-week moving average. Note that the dollar is trying to bounce off the 200-week moving average. If it wants to have a bull market, the dollar needs to completely collapse below that 200-week moving average and never get back above it again. The duration of the Bitcoin bull market. Okay, we just had the Sunday close for Bitcoin. We're now starting the Monday session. Bitcoin for the week was up 7.50%, 7.5%, right on the nose. It closed back above the 20-week moving average. That's a blue line you see right there. Back above the 10. Red line bouncing over here off the 50. And I continue to point out, Bitcoin is trapped between resistance at the 20 that we broke. We tried to get above it, and we got rejection, and we dropped 29% in 8 days. Tried to get above it again, got rejection, came back, dropped 19%, back to the 50-week, and now attempting to get back above it again. Bitcoin follows the 20-week moving average. In order to have a bullish scenario going forward with Bitcoin, it's got to stay above the 20-week. Then it's got to be able to break the downward trend line. It's got to be able to clear these previous highs, the resistance zone, and take out the previous peak in 2021, 69,000, which we've made 8 failed attempts to get above 69,000. You've got to be able to clear the 69,000 area right there and stay above it, never drop back below it again. In order to do that, we have to somehow manage to be able to dodge a recession. We know the uninverting of the yield curve, telling us one is about to happen. The Psalm rule being triggered with the unemployment rate, the 3-month moving average, above the 0.5% above the low from the last 12 months, is also telling us a recession is about to happen. People don't believe that. Right now, we just got the Fed rate cuts, meaning told, oh, it's going to be like 2020 and 2021. No problem. You see, at that time, the Psalm rule was not triggered, telling us we're going to have a recession. Back then, the uninverting of the yield curve was not happening. You didn't have an inverted yield curve and an uninverting of the yield curve. You have all these recessionary indicators reporting we're about to have a recession. People believe what they want to believe, sit around daydreaming about themselves, driving a bunch of sports cars around in their mansion, and looking at what's really going on. Now, I've talked about Bitcoin could come up above this level and still get another lower high at this area right here at about 68 or 69,000. Or if we don't just blow through it, we could pull back. We're starting at the 200 period in the daily time frame, then still do it. But the other possibility is that we don't, that we end up setting up another lower high. I want to be watching these moving averages because look, they're coming back down, taking out the 50-week and not bouncing off of it anymore, but start taking it out as the bulls and bears continue to fight it out for control. And that would be extremely bearish and likely put the final nail in the coffin for Bitcoin. Again, you know what has to happen to be bullish. You got to stay, we got above the 20-week. That's bullish. Now we got to go back and clear 69,000. Then we got to clear all these, sorry, I had a cough there. Then we have to clear all these levels of resistance, you know, the downward trend line, these horizontal resistance levels making up the resistance zone. And again, get above them and never drop back below them for the duration of the bull market. So we'll close back above the 20. Now, the last couple of times we've done that, we've gotten rejection. Now, I was saying, we topped over 6 months ago in March, and we've seen nothing but distribution taking place, which we were told was not going to happen. My signals have been going back and forth for bullish and bearish, calling these bottoms, calling these tops. Did a pretty good job. I called the May bottom, the July bottom, called this bottom. I told you that hey, boom, we had this 29% drop and we hit support at our 50-week and Bitcoin's average price. Same thing over here. Moon boys, now, well, my signals have been telling us, hey, you know, we're going to go down, we're going to go up, we're going to go down, we're going to go up, and we've just been in this choppiness. I've talked about the turns. I've talked about momentum shifting as it has happened in the daily time frame. But the moon boys, here we go, not. Here we go, 100,000, not. Here we go, 100,000, 100,000, not. Here we go, 100,000, not. Go, 100,000, not. The very people that told us all this distribution wasn't going to happen, and we've dropped 33%, one third Bitcoin's value from the high to the low. They're now going to tell us when it's over. I'll tell you when it's over. Bitcoin could get above the 20-week. Okay, we're above the 20-week. Right now we're dropping. We just closed the session, and now we're down 1.40%, just in a matter of moments after the Sunday close. But you got to get above 69,000. You got to clear the downward trend line. You got to clear these resistance levels. Never drop back below them. Have the dollar completely collapse, which it broke out. It back tested. It's bottoming right now. As it surges back up, Bitcoin will start to collapse, along with quitting the recession. Now, again, we have the uninverting of the yield curve, and rule both telling us we're about to have a recession probably within 3 to 6 months. Bitcoin and the stock market will begin to price that in. They cut. This is so bullish. Bring back quantitative easing, and Bitcoin's going to soar to 100,000 before you know it, and then it's going to. And now the targets is every time Bitcoin starts to sell off, they start jacking it up. 350, 400,000. Previously around 150, 200. 250,000. Every time it goes down, jack these targets up. We'll see it by the end of the week. We get a bar that starts selling off here that gives us another lower high. Or do we attempt or pull back and then attempt to go above it, get above this level and again hit this trend line? Or am I wrong about 68,000? You know, I think we go maybe to 68, 69,000, resistance zone 70, 71,000, get the larger divergence with the S&P, but maybe I'm wrong about that. Maybe we just get another lower high. You know, when Bitcoin formed the topping process in 2021, it got a very feeble bounce before it started to collapse, merging with the S&P. The S&P made a new high this past week here. Bitcoin has gotten this rebound off of 50, but it's still not moving here. So, again, my guess is it will, you know, I have the guts to tell you what I think. But again, if you start dropping back down, everything starts turning back to bearish, then the risk is we just come back down with another lower high and start taking out the 50-week moving average. What is really interesting to me is when I look at the Bitcoin weekly chart, with the last bounce we got at the 50-week moving average, we're seeing accumulation there. We saw it with the previous bounce after that, Continue to see the distribution into the rallies. You see these little red arrows up here? As we're starting to sell off. Now, this may go away by the end of the week. It's a weekly chart. Starting to sell off 1.40% on Bitcoin immediately, and we're getting another one of these arrows. So NASDAQ goes up and fills the gap at 20,400. Bitcoin still may go towards 68 or 69,000. Be wrong about that, and it could just get another lower high as it's stalling at the 200 period moving average. But pretty fascinating here as we begin to the brand new week here. We're seeing distribution form, and again we are forming that divergence with the S&P 500. Back over here, when we got the divergence with the S&P 500, we had this more of a feeble rebound right here. It didn't go back up near the highs, and maybe that's what we get here. I don't know. I thought NASDAQ will eventually go to 20,400, so it does fill that gap at 20,400. Bitcoin still has a good shot of going to the declining trend line at 68,000. When it diverged, when the S&P is making new highs over here, and sorry about that, I had to cough, a little sick. He was making new highs in 2022 at the 2022 January top. Bitcoin got this feeble rebound. Eventually, NASDAQ or S&P started playing catch up to Bitcoin, dropping 52%, and Bitcoin rebounded back up to the 200. In the daily time frame, it is interesting. That's where we're at right now. So just something to be aware of. And Bitcoin's struggling. We've come up to this in the daily time frame, this 200 period, okay? And we're struggling there. Now, maybe we pull back and go higher, the trend line or to the resistance zone. But if NASDAQ fills a gap, I think Bitcoin could do that. But I still don't think it's going to make new highs. And I think eventually it's going to come back and take out Bitcoin's average price and end up resuming the decline that it previously had. Now, Bitcoin tried to bounce off the 50-week moving average, weekly time frame, trying to bounce off Bitcoin's average price here and here. You lose that level. That's extremely bearish. So we're stalling at the 200. Do we clear it? Go up into this other area? Do we pull back test, and then do it? Am I wrong about that? 68, 69,000, and we get another lower high, come back down and start dropping back below the 100 period, back below the green line, the 50, we're making our way to start taking out these lows. If I bring it up close, you can see again, we're stalling at the 200. I'm a big believer in the 100 period. Bitcoin follows the 100 period in the daily, follows the 20 week in the weekly. Talked about the 20 week. Here's the 100 day. We're back above it. You got to stay above it. You drop back below it, or even pull back and keep going, and then drop back below it. Like we did over here. Again, we stayed above it for a little while. Then eventually we lost it. You lose the 100 eventually and cannot get back above it. Again, we've tested it here, tried to get above it. It failed. Over here, tested it. It failed. Over here, we're testing it. Now we're above it. Be able to stay above the 100 period moving average. Now, testing the 200 and the 50s cross below the 200. That's a green line over here. It's still below the 200 period. I don't expect the 50s going to get back above the 200, even if we go up to where I think we're going, 68 or 69. Now, again, I could be wrong. If all my signals turn back to bearish and we end up establishing a lower high at the 200. We pull back and go higher, or if we start busting up through this area, then again, if NASDAQ can reach the 20,400 area to fill the gap, I think Bitcoin can reach the 68, 69,000 area for a test. Bitcoin peaked back in March. I told you what has to happen for Bitcoin to move back into a bullish scenario, and it doesn't happen. The bulls have their work cut out for them because they got to start clearing all of these levels of resistance. That would be bullish, but then not dropping back below 69,000 again, ever during the duration of the bull market. Made 8 attempts to get above 69,000. Every single one of them has failed. That's what has to happen for Bitcoin to move back into a bullish scenario. And again, holding above this 100, staying above it, and then getting this 50 back above the 200. Even if we go up here, I don't think the 50 is going to get back above the 200. But when we got the death cross, which is the 50 crossing back below the 200, the Moon Boys told us how bullish the death cross is. I'm telling you about these back and forth swings over and over. Moon Boys, they don't do that. They just say Bitcoin's going to go straight up. Eventually, we're going to get a bigger directional move. And if my signals, which are correct, turn bullish and we somehow dodge a recession and Bitcoin stays above 69,000, great. But you start coming down, losing Bitcoin's average price, losing the 50-week moving average, all kinds of technical damage. Again, we know recession is coming. Bitcoin is going to get a much bigger drop. In this video, I'll be talking about NASDAQ reaching the gap fill area at 20,400. That's this gap up here. And again, if it does that, both Bitcoin and NASDAQ stalled at their declining trend lines. And then Bitcoin broke above it and NASDAQ followed. So if NASDAQ is headed up here, whether pulling back or whether just going parabolic, again, Bitcoin could reach that 68,000, 69,000 area. And I believe NASDAQ peaked over here, as I talked about the day after the peak, warned that a peak was happening ahead of the peak of the trend lines in the weekly time frame. So too, I think it's forming a double top, very similar to the double top that Bitcoin formed, and now it's getting a series of lower highs and lower lows. Eventually, I think the 50 will join Bitcoin in dropping below the 200 and getting a death cross. One thing I just want to make you aware of, again, was trying to get above a declining 100 period moving average. If it ends up dropping back below it, losing Bitcoin's average price here, that's going to be extremely bearish. That'll put the final nail in the coffin for Bitcoin. It came down to this area and tried to bounce, failed, tried to bounce, failed, and finally, that was it. Eventually it made another attempt to do it, and it failed again. Bottom fell out of Bitcoin. I talked about that Bitcoin could be in an expanded flat, that this is not a bull market, but a very, very long corrective pattern, which is you get a peak over here, 69,000. We drop down to 15. You come back up, and you slightly take out this high. And then is what happens with an expanded flat. You expand above the top, and you expand above the bottom. And then you come back down, and you take out this low. And that would mean a drop below 15,000. Long before that happens, if that does in fact play out, Bitcoin would have to lose its average price. And if it does, eventually the 100 drops below Bitcoin's average price. Bitcoin's going to be opening the door for a much bigger drop. Period, again, like over here, we had this sell-off right here. We were told we were never going below 60,000 again. We did. And we came down here, we were told it's over, and then it fell some more. I remember right here, after Bitcoin getting a 30 or 50% haircut, we rallied back up. And this is where we told it's over, it's a breakout. And again, right after that, the bottom fell out of Bitcoin. I'm just looking at these support and resistance levels. I'm telling you what needs to happen for the bulls to regain control. I'm telling you, if the bears end up taking us down below these lows, 50-week moving average, coin's average price, then you're going to see a much bigger drop on Bitcoin. Now, Bitcoin's still struggling at this resistance area, but again, if it pulls back and backtests one of these trend lines, or if it's clearing the 200 period moving average, again, you can form that larger divergence with the S&P 500. We're stalling at the 200 here. Momentum is still bullish at this point. But if you look at it, again, we've cleared this lower resistance right here. We've cleared the 100 period moving average. Still have this upper end of the resistance right here that we've stalled out at over here, which was the 78.6 Fibonacci of that decline. So do we get another lower high at the 200, which is now flattening out and starting to curl over, dropping back down the 100, dropping back down below the 50, and that's it. We pull back, end up coming up into this area. And again, the scenario is that we clear these levels. Most people hang into this soft landing scenario. It's really amazing. The Fed starts cutting. They're usually doing so to try to ease the pain of a coming recession. At Powell, and he came out and he goes, and he wanted to tell us how great the jobs report was. And we're cutting aggressively. We want to keep the economic expansion going. Look, Powell knows we're going to have a recession. They need a recession to solve their inflation issue. People buy into this soft landing propaganda. Janet Yellen, the Treasury Secretary, out there telling us, "Oh no, we're gonna have a soft landing." All over at the Fed, and the Fed officials are saying it. The experts on the financial channels and all over social media. If you believe we're going to have a recession, if you believe the uninverting of the yield curve, which is predicting a recession, and historically has an accurate track record of doing so, and the Psalm rule and other inflationary indicators, you believe that over the experts, then you're just a Neanderthal. Absolutely incredible. It's almost like a cult. It's incredible. Look, I think Bitcoin's in a topping process. We are above the 50 level, or the 50 level on the RSI, dropping that back down and losing that level, and possibly again, I'm wrong, and we're getting another lower high, but we could still back test, pull back before reaching this level. We'll be watching. If NASDAQ attempts to go fill the gap at 20,400, if you want to see that, go watch my stock videos. Link the latest one at the end of this video. NASDAQ can reach 20,400. Bitcoin could come up into this area. Bulls can clear this level, then we'll see what happens, but I think these recession indicators are going to be correct, and I think that's going to be bad for Bitcoin. I'll be watching to see if Bitcoin, so I'll be watching to see if we get rejection, and then I'll be watching, do we stall at the 200, or can we get above it? Can the RSI remain above 50? Can the MACD remain above 0? We had these bullish divergences, and again, price bounced right off of this lower boundary. If we get rejection at the 200 and this upper level of resistance, Bitcoin is at risk of another lower high. My personal belief is it's going to get up here. Like I said, it may just get a weaker rebound, the divergence with the S&P 500. Bitcoin loses the 100 period moving average and can't get back above it, as we've lost it here, but then we made these attempts to get back above it. They keep failing. We'll see what becomes of this one. Do that immediately or go higher and then do it. The risk is eventually Bitcoin comes and tests this trend line right here, the low here at 49,000, the peak here at 48,000. People are saying the same exact thing that they said back over here. You know, Bitcoin's never dropping below 60,000 again. It's going to be at 100,000. You know, over here it was within 3 months. And they said this, they're saying the same thing here, here, and here. All we're seeing is a bunch of distribution. I talk about S&P and Bitcoin diverging. We're having the S&P move to a new high. Bitcoin is not. And again, over here, when S&P topped out in 2022, Bitcoin had a more feeble rally up to complete that divergence. Do we see that right here now? Can't move above this previous high right here. Whoop, below too high right there. Or do we move back up to the trend line towards 68, 69,000 and get this larger divergence with the S&P more powerful move? So we'll see how it unfolds. Again, the divergences have marked the turning points for the top since 2017. That's exactly what we have right now. Now, this is Tether, and in the lower window is Bitcoin. The trend line here is called all the Bitcoin tops 2017, 2019, 2020. These were major sells. This is 72%. It just doesn't look as extreme because I have the two windows. Over here, 55%. Every time we've touched this trend line. Then the 2021 top. Now we've hit it again back in March. And pretty good shot. That's going to be a top. And we got back above this resistance level. Too thick. Right there. And again, if we pull back to back test it, or this trend line right here where they intersect, again, Bitcoin may go to 68, 69,000. But if you think, oh, this is just a bunch of FUD, we're going to have a soft landing, there's not going to be a recession. These recession indicators, like the Psalm rule, hasn't been wrong for forever. I mean, for the decades since the 1960s, it's not been wrong. It's predicted every recession correctly. If you think that it's just a bunch of FUD, you need Bitcoin to move into a new bull market. You know what you need to happen? You need to come down and you need to break this trend line, and then you need to see Bitcoin You need to see Tether come back down and start collapsing and taking out this trend line. And that would be extremely bullish for Bitcoin. What's happened is the opposite. Bitcoin formed another top, and it's bounced, and this time now it's breaking above this area. And if it's just pulling back here, it's just another counter trend. And again, if we come back here and back test and then bounce, maybe we go to 68, 69,000. But again, this could surge further as we had over here in 2021 and 2022. You can get that banded flat scenario where we go back down and we test the low at 15,000. Bitcoin's so bullish. Why is it not breaking this trend line? Explain this to me. That's what has to happen for Bitcoin to have another big surge. It has to break that trend line. All it's done is bounce off of it saying, hey, we have potentially another top in place. I'm just showing you to happen for the bullish scenario, what we got to do. We got to clear the resistance. We got to above the 20, stay above the 100, 69,000, never drop back below it again, come back down. We start losing. Port levels I've talked about Bitcoin's in some serious trouble. But this is one reason why I think Bitcoin still can make it to 68, 69,000, establish another lower high, and NASDAQ goes to fill the gap at 20,400. Bitcoin very well could get a larger rebound. We'll see how it unfolds. As it gets another lower high, signals all revert back to bearish. But again, the bullish scenario here, really problematic for Tether, the Bitcoin bulls, because again, it's suggesting another Bitcoin top.